morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today called Understanding Technology Insurance. My name is Anae Augustini, and I'm CEO of CID Insurance Programs. And we're really lucky today to have Meredith Bennett, who's the National Tech and Cyber Practice Leader for USLI. She's very good and very knowledgeable about technology, so this will be a great webinar to attend. I also want to introduce Sienna Vasquez, who's our professional liability underwriter, and that you will be working with when you submit your quotes to CID. And then I also want to introduce Jacob Cole, who's our marketing specialist, and he makes sure that everything runs smoothly behind the scenes for all of our webinars. So let's move on, and I'll just go through the logistics and turn it over to Meredith. As you know, most of you, you will be muted. You'll be able to hear, but you won't be able to speak. But your voice is important to us, so please pose questions as we go along through the webinar in the chat room, and I'll be watching for those questions as they come in, and we'll pose them to Meredith as they come in. So please remember there's a short survey at the end, and again, your feedback is important to us, so we'd really like to hear how we're doing, any suggestions that you have for future webinars or things that we could do better to improve on. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Meredith.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Excited to be here. Again, my name is Meredith Bennett. I'm with USLI, and today we're going to learn about technology E&O, the important coverages for them, what USLI's appetite is. We'll go over some claims examples. I will introduce you to some resources that USLI has, and of course, how to get more technology risk. Let's talk about marketing. So why do IT firms need errors and omissions insurance? I will share with you, my husband's in IT, and he makes fun of me all the time because I don't know IT. I can insure IT people, but I don't know how to do certain things with my computer. Technology, especially today, it's growing rapidly. It's not going away. These are professionals that have a designated skill, just like any other profession. So often I will see that a submission come in that says, well, this person's been in business for 5 years. They've had a BOP, but now they have a contract that's requiring them to carry errors and omissions. Well, gosh, their main exposure is probably errors and omissions, not GL. So that's a common misconception. There's several different coverages that you will find on a technology errors and omissions product. The errors and omissions, of course, is kind of the meat. Media liability is often included as part of this, and cyber liability, really important. So sometimes I get asked, what's the difference between tech and cyber? Well, tech is errors and omissions if you make a mistake on somebody else's system. Cyber could be because of an error or omission if you are a technology professional. So sometimes there's a gray area there or an overlap. Sometimes it is just if you had a type of data breach. So we'll go into that a little bit further in here. And then media liability can be important depending on what they're doing. So we're going to jump right into the media. When you have media, you have intellectual property and personal injury. Those are the two things that make up media liability. Intellectual property is going to refer to creations of the mind, inventions, artistic works. It's going to be trademarks. It could be copyright. So there's a lot of different things that a technology professional would need intellectual property for. For example, we had a claim. It was a basic IT person that would go into offices. Oh, did I just lose connection? This person would go into offices and set up people with different software, and they hired an independent contractor to help out with a large project. And during this project, this person that they hired to help out decided that they were going to use the same software license for every single user in that office. And the software, which you can't do, you needed a separate license for each person. And so that major software company, I won't name names, but it was a pretty big one that's in Washington, found out and was not happy because that was a copyright infringement of the software. So that was an example of a claim for a technology professional when it comes to IP. Other things could be, what if you're a website designer and you design a website for someone and you put up a picture that you didn't have purchased the rights to. The person who owns that image is going to come after the business that you designed the website for, and also you for an intellectual property claim. All right. Personal injury. Isn't this a GL coverage? I get asked that sometimes. It can be, yes, but GL, in the ISO form and the BOP form, will exclude professional services, and it will exclude personal injury claims arising from professional services. So you could potentially have a gap if you're only relying on personal injury on the GL form. So you want personal injury with the E&O. And you can see here, claim alleging wrongful entry, wrongful eviction, right of privacy, individuals who have had their image or likeness used without their permission. Few claims here that we've had. We had one, it was a web analytics firm, and they were attaching a cookie as you're surfing the internet that you weren't able to, you can say, oh, I want to disable my cookies. You weren't able to get rid of this cookie. It was an error or omission of that web analytics firm, and it was a pretty big right of privacy type of claim. We put it under the personal injury category because it was a right of privacy. I have the right to surf the internet and not be tracked was basically the claim. Now you could see where something like that could be a little bit in the cyber world as we talk about cyber, but it really was a personal injury claim. We also had a social media marketing consultant. So I'm kind of already giving you a little taste of the types of risks that we write, the types of classes that we write. We put social media marketing consultants on our tech form because a lot of them are also doing web analytics and social engine or search engine optimization and website design. And then they may take your Facebook and say, okay, let's get, the most likes that we can, and let's develop a campaign. And that's great, and they do all of these different services for the web. We had one individual that took an image off of YouTube, took like a screenshot, and developed a campaign around it. And that campaign was so horrible and distasteful that not only the followers of that company's Facebook page, but also the employees were horrified. They had to take it down immediately. The business, not our insured, the business tried to do some PR because the ad was so horrible that they made a large donation to a battered women's shelter. All right, that gives you an idea of how horrible this ad was. That was the industry or the nonprofit that they chose, and the model brought a claim against our insured because not only did our insured use her image without her permission, but also depicted her in a false light. I never would have done that ad. I hated that ad. You just depicted me in a false light. And that was a $750,000 claim. So those are some of the things that pop up with personal injury. Network security liability. This is part of cyber liability. All right. So there's a lot of different things that come up with cyber. Cyber is almost like an umbrella. And we'll talk a lot about the first party coverages later in this presentation. Network security liability, that's your transmission of malicious code. That's if your computer's used in a denial of service attack. Misappropriation of personally identifiable information or third-party corporate information. We often see that this is what's required for a contract. If I'm coming onto your property, you want to make sure that I have GL. You also want to make sure that I have network security liability so that if I cause a breach for you, I have coverage for that. So this is where it does get gray when you have E&O and cyber for a technology professional. If a basic E&O policy does not include this network security liability, and a cyber policy excludes professional services, and I'm an IT professional and I come into your office and I hook up your network, I make sure your firewall is configured correctly, and oops, I mess up and I cause you to have a breach, is that a cyber claim or an E&O claim? So we always put them together. We put them on the same form because we don't want two different carriers or two different forms pointing fingers at each other saying, well, no, that's cyber because you caused a breach. And then the cyber policy says, no, that's E&O because that was your professional service. So we always put them together. Privacy liability, you'll often see this as an insuring agreement. This also falls under the cyber liability umbrella. This could be unauthorized access to the insured's computer system, all right? So I just talked about how I could cause a breach potentially for my client. What if I have a breach and people decide to bring a claim against me because all of their personally identifiable information was released? What about a denial of authorized electronic access? I'm hosting all of your records in the cloud and you don't have access to them. That could be considered privacy liability. And then just violation of a privacy policy. You often find that on websites, all of your application service providers, software as a service, where you have a username and password, they have a privacy policy. And if you read that privacy policy, which, hey, if you want something to do that's fun on a Friday night, grab yourself a glass of wine and start reading some of these privacy policies. I'm kidding. But they can be lengthy, but they basically say, this is what I do with your information. I'm going to collect your information. This is what I promise to do with it. If they violate that, that will fall under privacy liability, which is a type of cyber coverage, but important for technology professionals, especially if there's a username and password involved with their services. So now we have first-party expenses, privacy breach expenses. So what is a privacy breach? So it's unauthorized disclosure of non-public personal information. It could be electronic, it could be non-electronic. I'll tell you, there's very few technology professionals that have a box of paper files sitting there. But for those few that may still do, this would fall, paper records are included if they are compromised. Suspected privacy breach and a security breach. So if you think someone's been in your system or someone came in your system, even if they didn't have access to personally identifiable information, this is what will trigger these first-party expenses. So the insured will say, hey, someone's in my system, and everything here will then trigger development of a plan to assist in responding to that data breach. Probably the first thing that's going to happen would be forensics, data analysis. What did they have access to, the hackers? What it wasn't personally identifiable information. Are they still in the system? How do we get them out? All of that. Once forensics discovers what's been compromised, then, with the legal team, we determine, do I need to notify people? So if the first party expenses will cover all of these items related to a data breach, privacy breach, or as I said, a suspected privacy breach. You may say somebody's in my system, the forensics team gets in there and they're like, yep, somebody was in your system, but they only had access to server A, which it looks like all you keep there is your marketing information. So nobody needs to be notified, and then notification doesn't really get triggered. So all of these are part of the first party expenses. Other basic first party expenses would be data restoration, business interruption, and cyber extortion. So data restoration, if you need to restore lost records because of some type of security breach or data breach. If you had a cyber business interruption, perhaps you're a web hosting company or some type of cloud provider, and you're not making money because your system is down. You're probably also going to have an E&O claim, right? Because your clients aren't going to be happy because they rely on you for hosting or for that software as a service, but you may also be losing money. So there's cyber business interruption and then cyber extortion. I put in quotes there MedPay because this is something that we offer for our smaller risks. So cyber extortion, I could probably do an entire 30-minute webinar just on cyber extortion alone. It's one of my favorite topics because I think it's so fascinating and it's not going away. It's, ransomware is probably what you're more familiar with. Ransomware gets into your system, usually because of some type of phishing attack. They hold your files hostage. They want you to pay so much money, usually in Bitcoin, in order to get the files back, a decryption key. All right. There are other types of cyber extortion, but that is the most popular one. What we're seeing is that managed service providers are being targeted by these hackers with ransomware. Managed service providers, if you're not familiar with that term, is basically when a company outsources their IT. So maybe they have one person internally that does their IT, but then they outsource a lot of things. So it could be a lot of different types of services. Your help desk, your backups, hosting, some security. Managed service providers, they often have access to the companies that are their clients. So I mentioned my husband in the beginning of this presentation. He works for a managed service provider. So, during all of this quarantining and COVID, he's working from home. And I often hear him say, okay, I'm going to come into your system now, and he can log into his client's system. Well, these managed service providers are being targeted by the hackers because depending on how they get in, they are sometimes able to, once they're in the managed service provider, then get into all of the managed service providers' systems as well. So it's kind of like, oh, I can get into 10 companies for the price of one type of thing for what it the effort that I put forth to get into one company, I now have access to 11 or 20 or 50, depending on how large that managed service provider is. So that's definitely trending in the ransomware space. USLI offers cyber extortion up to the limit. On some policies, it's $1 million. On other policies, it's up to $5 million. It depends on the form that we're using. We offer a reward. So if the insured is able to bring us information, if someone is able to bring the insured information that would lead to the arrest of the extortionist, we would pay a reward. I wish that I could tell you that we've paid out that reward every single time, but unfortunately we have not. These hackers and ransomware perpetrators are difficult to catch, but in the event that they are, we do offer a reward. And then again, I said, there's MedPay there. You can see on your screen in quotes. Well, what is that? Well, for the smaller businesses, smaller for USLI is $1 million in revenue and under. We did add something special for them. And the best way that I can describe it is a type of MedPay. So what we started seeing happen was for some of these managed service providers, they weren't hacked, but their customer was. Their customer would get hit with ransomware, and their customer would say, well, I don't want to pay the ransom, just restore my backups. So that can be a way, that you don't have to pay the ransom. Restore my backups, restore me back to, the point where I was before I got hit with this ransomware. And then our insured would say, whoops, you're right. You were paying me for services to back you up, and I made an error or omission, and I don't have your backups. So now that's a problem, right? And so the insured would come to us and say, well, what do I do? And we would say, well, you kind of have to wait until they bring a claim. It's not triggering coverage yet. So we did want to trigger coverage. So we're giving them a small amount of coverage to go ahead and try and fix that, to either maybe try and enlist the help of a third party to get their data back up and running, restore their data, or perhaps proactively try and pay the ransom so that they can get their data back that way. And the thought there is to give the insured a small amount, $5,000, to get ahead of what could potentially be a much worse situation, and then really save relations with that client that they have and make things better. So that's a little USLI there for the smaller businesses. Other types of cyber coverages, and this doesn't hit them all, but these are pretty popular. Dependent business interruption. So if you are relying on a third party and they go down, you have cyber or dependent business interruption there because you depend on them. System failure damage. Perhaps there's something wrong in your system. I think of quoting. If I want to quote online and I can't quote because something internally happened, we could potentially lose some business. So that's a type of business interruption there as well. If it's a system failure in your own internal system, that is explicitly excluded on the property business interruption form. So it picks up the gap there. Reputational harm. You see this. This is, again, a type of business interruption where, after all the dust is settled and the breach is done and everyone's been notified, are you losing business? Because people don't want to shop or come back to you. And then, of course, cybercrime. So the coverage for lost money. I lost money because I was tricked into wiring money to who I thought was my CEO is pretty popular. Or if someone hacks into your system and is able to get your bank username and password and is able to transfer money out of your account into their account, wire transfer fraud. Okay. Another type of social engineering coverage that USLI does cover on one of their forms, social engineering fraud for products. So this, again, was kind of designed with the IT people in mind, because we weren't seeing very many claims, or any actually, where the IT people were getting tricked into wiring money to who they thought was the CEO. But we were seeing claims where the IT professional was getting tricked into sending product. So what do I mean by that? Well, they get an email that says, hey, Meredith, I'm opening a new location. I need, 2 new servers and 3 new laptops sent to this new location. Okay. And they go ahead and do that and then invoice the customer like they usually do. And the customer says, Meredith, I didn't order this. And of course, that warehouse or wherever random place that they just sent that computer equipment, it's gone. And so products is covered under the social engineering fraud insuring agreement on one of our forms. And that was designed with the IT professional in mind. Other types of cybercrime, you may see utility fraud or telecom fraud, where someone hacks in to your voice over IP system, racks up huge amounts of long distance calls. Or utility fraud, They hack in and they use all of your computing power to mine Bitcoin, sometimes called cryptojacking. So you'll see these are other types of cybercrime coverages. But wait, there's more. There's so much coverage that you can be found on a tech E&O policy, and these all still kind of fall under that cyber umbrella. Additional third-party regulatory action, so important, especially in the state of California. You have your California Consumer Privacy Act that is live and enforcement just went live. Again, that's another topic we could probably do a whole 30-minute webinar on. I apologize for all the acronyms up there. But FTC, Federal Trade Commission, HIPAA, you're probably all familiar with that. That's in the medical space. Your state attorney general, the CCPA, that's your California, and then GDPR, that's the EU's General Data Protection Regulation. All of these regulations are designed, or regulatory bodies are in charge of keeping us as consumers, to feel protected. And you have to comply with these depending on, where you are and how many customers you have in each state or in the EU, et cetera. Important part of the regulatory action that I want to point out is, does it have to stem from a data breach, or can it stem from a violation of any of these types of privacy laws? So, good thing to look for in your policy wording. USLI covers regulatory action arising out of violation of a privacy law, meaning, you don't have to have a data breach for the state attorney general to come after you for a violation of California's Privacy Act. And that's where the regulatory action picks up, and it does include fines and penalties. Additional third-party payment card industry, that's what PCI stands for, fines, penalties, and assessments. If you have some type of data breach and are found to be in violation of the data security standards set forth by the Payment Card Industry Council, they can assess fines and penalties. Assessments would also be chargebacks. So there are chargebacks available as coverage under that PCI insuring agreement. So who needs all of this coverage? Probably the best answer to protect your E&O is everybody needs it, right? But there's definitely some higher risk. Application service providers, software as a service, staffing agencies are going to have a lot of personally identifiable information of all the people that they're staffing out. Managed service providers, I kind of already talked about that. And we do see a lot of these coverages needed for contracts. Who does USLI target? I started to allude to that with some of my examples and my claims examples. Lots of things in software, network, space, client help desk, support, website design, data management. I'm not going to read all of these to you in the interest of time, but you can see there's my little ShamWow commercial again. But wait, there's more. We target so many different classes. I often say, if it's a technology professional service, just let me take a look. Send it to CID. Let them take a look. We can accommodate so many different classes, and sometimes it isn't really about the class. It's more about what are you allowing the end user to do, and the terminology can really change over time. We have baked into our form language, including but not limited to wording. That including but not limited to wording is so important. So important. Because it allows terminology to change over time. So broad. And it allows them to grow and change. I just said about, what does it allow the end user to do? We have to look at high hazard areas. So USLI may not be a market for things that have a high probability of bodily injury, aggregated privacy, or aggregated financial loss. CID absolutely does. But we may stay away from these. So what do I mean by this? High probability of bodily injury. I had an app developer come in one time that had developed an app that it used your camera on selfie mode, and you followed something on the screen with your eyes, and it gave you your estimated blood alcohol content. So to me, I think as an underwriter, what's the worst that could happen? Oh, somebody could drive drunk. That's not good. High probability of bodily injury if that doesn't function correctly. Aggregated privacy, we're not going to write social networking platforms. We also would stay away from someone that's hosting electronic medical records, like if they are the application for electronic medical records that doctors are using. Because if they have a breach, it's lots of doctors and all of their patients whose records would be breached. Aggregated financial loss, we would stay away from some of these like fintech apps. If you've seen Acorns or what's the other popular one, Robinhood, etc. So we do have a really small product called MICROTEK that's designed for up to 1 million in revenue and up to 7 employees. And it covers all of these items that I just went over. That privacy breach expense plus, we went over all those different cyber coverages. In order to get some of those coverages, it may have to go non-admitted in the state of California right now, but we do expect a lot of those coverages to be admitted in August, so next month, which is super exciting, and it's pretty much admitted throughout the country. We also can handle up to 15 million in revenue for technology accounts. And then we have a sister company that CID has access to that can handle up to 500 million in revenue. So we do have a pretty large appetite, but MICROTEK is probably our most marketable because it throws everything in there together with the general liability, the business personal property. We can do an umbrella over it, has all of those E&O coverages that we talked about. We can do up to 5 million limits for a contract. We do a blanket additional insured, waiver subrogation. We can offer stopgap coverage if that's needed for any of you listening, perhaps in the state of Washington, primary non-contributory wording, etc. So if you have a contract, send it to CID, they'll send it to us. We're pretty good at, making sure that we can check off all those things for the insured to make sure that they're meeting their contract. And then again, but wait, there's more. USLI also offers the Business Resource Center. And if you haven't, had the opportunity to check this out, you can check that out on our website. There's lots of different things that we offer. Discounted background checks, for example, People Systems, which is a human resource hotline. A lot of these technology startups that we write, they have their developers and their sales team, but they don't have anyone that's really in charge of HR. So what if you have a question about, I have somebody going out on maternity leave, I don't know what to do. You can call People Systems, and it's completely unlimited. It's confidential. They don't report back to USLI, what the insured asked about, and it's like a outsourced HR department that's free. It comes with a policy. And we also offer eRisk Hub, which is an online risk management tool for all things cyber. Super neat tool. There's lots of news articles on there, sample privacy policies, information about CCPA, data breach maps, all kinds of just really neat stuff. So now that you're all excited to sell tech E&O, you want to know how you can do that and how you can get more. The fastest growing classes that I'm seeing right now come into us are online learning, e-commerce, and video games. And I'll tell you, the first two are because of what's happening with the pandemic. Lots of people are being innovative with coming up with new online learning platforms and tools to help all of the schools. E-commerce, things are moving to e-commerce. I think there's maybe a lot of businesses that realize they needed to ramp up their online, so they're hiring professionals to help with that, to help with, implementing shopping carts and digital marketing and just basic web design. I need to redo my website. I know the restaurants in my area, I feel like all of them redid their websites so that we could all try and order curbside pickup. And I'm sitting in Pennsylvania, so we now have outdoor dining available, but they're doing the ordering on your phone. So you have to download an app and then order on the phone. So all of these, where there's an opportunity, we're seeing these technology professionals be very innovative. So this is probably the three fastest growing classes that I'm seeing right now. Here's a chart from 2014 that was pretty good. I won't spend too much time here. I'm sure this presentation can be mailed to everyone. So how do you get more of all of these? IT staffing firms, associations, referrals, and one thing that I don't have up there is also, website. A lot of technology professionals do search for their insurance. Google's their friend and they like to be online. So if you can somehow increase your presence, your web presence, so that they can find you as being an expert in the tech space, that's a great way to get technology business. IT staffing firms, if you have an IT staffing firm, find out, of all of those people that they're placing, excuse me, are they required to carry their own insurance? Because it may be an opportunity for you to write individual policies for all of those people that they're placing. And then, is there a tech council or a tech association in your area that you can get involved with? That's a great way to meet a lot of technology professionals all at once as well. And then just basic referral risk management. Hey, okay, Dr. Bob, you're my dentist. Who does your IT, Dr. Bob? Can you introduce me to make sure that they have the correct coverage in case they potentially cause a breach on your system for you? So lots of different ways to get referrals there. And that's my presentation. Yeah.
Wonderful. What a great job. You're just such a wealth of knowledge. So I'm sure everyone really appreciated your presentation. Thank you all for joining us today. And, Sienna is available. She's here to provide you with quotes on any kind of professional liability, but definitely technology is what we talked about today, and cyber liability in combination. So please make sure to complete our survey so that we get feedback from you. And if you have any questions on this, please contact Sienna. You see her phone number here, or you can reach her via email. She's very responsive and knowledgeable. All right. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you.